Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and this time we've got the pleasure of watching Menli playing in the Tier 8 Japanese Heavy, the OHO, certainly one of the biggest tanks in the game. But it looks like Menli is already a little bit jealous there. He has a look over to his left and sees the brand new VK100-01P. Maybe he's wondering how the Japanese Tier 8 Heavy tank is going to stack up to that brand new German kind of Minnie Mouse at Tier 8, the VK100-01. Now Menli is playing in a platoon with his baby brother, really, the Oni, the tank that will grow up to be the OHO in just one tier. And what's the name of the Oni player? Dadiles? Dadiles? I don't know. That's quite weird. It's almost like Menli Dadiles, Menli Dads. I don't even know. Not sure if we should go there. Let's just focus on what Menli and his friend are going to be getting themselves into. And really, in this kind of a situation for the OHO, you have to be feeling pretty darn good about yourself. Well, at least not with regards to the amount of decent players there are in the enemy team, especially in their top tier tanks, and this being a 33%er, looks like Menli is going to have to carry super hard in this game if he wants to get through it. But what I'm talking about, the fact that there's no artillery on the enemy team, and there are no real big tanks that like to fire high explosive rounds, and those really are the arch nemesis for the OHO. Artillery will just slowly whittle down this tank, or sometimes very quickly actually if they are large caliber guns. And the 1,700 hit points which this tank has, which is really nice, certainly doesn't last all that long. But also what is great about this matchup is because the fact that the IS-6 platoon was signed up all together, that means they've taken the position as the top tier heavies on the enemy team. And the great thing about IS-6s, well, at least for Menli, is that they have 175mm of penetration on their standard rounds, and even if they fire APCR rounds, I think they've got about 217 or something around that region. And that is not enough to contest the front of the OHO's armor. The front of this tank is 200mm thick, and the side even is 105mm thick. It does have exceptional all-round protection. And the front of the turret is 200, the side of the turret is 200, and the rear of the turret is 200 as well. Now, one thing that's very interesting about Menli's setup here is that he is using the same derp gun that you first use on the OI, the Tier 6 Japanese heavy tank. This 150mm main armament. What is it exactly? Well, it's 149.1. Okay, not quite 150. But it does do a whopping amount of damage if it manages to penetrate. 910 to be exact. But one thing that's interesting about the Japanese derp gun compared to the Soviet derp gun is that the penetration on the high explosive rounds is slightly less. We're packing 75mm of penetration. Now, in a matchup like this, where there aren't that many, or if any, well, there's one Tier 6 tank on the enemy team, and not very many of them are lightly armored outside of the Scorpion, who Menli didn't quite actually manage to penetrate, only doing 343 splash damage to him. Just the difference between the Japanese derp guns and the KV2's derp gun is that this tank usually has better armor-piercing rounds. Oh, it definitely has better armor-piercing rounds. But one thing that's interesting is that Menli has decided to actually not load any armor-piercing rounds in this tank. He has gone for a full high-explosive loadout. And right now, these IS-6s just probably feel absolutely useless. And really good shot there by Menli to be able to shoot down onto the roof deck of the IS-6 there. Actually, I thought he did slightly more damage than was dealt. I think he did 323 to the IS-6 with that last shot. But still, a good result there. No, it's 260, sorry, 323 total. Looks like somebody else must have hit the IS-6 just in time. But now, finally, Menli is having to deal with tanks that have enough penetration to actually be able to contest him. The Centurion's 20-pounder gun with 226 suddenly is going to start to contest the OHO's armor. But Menli wants to focus on the T-29. Now, one thing you might be noticing is that this big old derp gun just can't bounce, and that's because the rounds are high explosive. They splash over the target, and unless they penetrate, they do, as we're seeing, about 300, 350 damage, up to, I want a sandwich please, up to about 400 if you do manage to hit a lightly armored part of the enemy tank. But right now, Menli hasn't actually managed to be able to penetrate any shells, but one thing that is great about this gun is you just feel so safe finishing off targets like that, and at the short to mid ranges that Menli is engaging, the accuracy on this gun, which is a rather awful 0.54, well, it doesn't really matter, and you don't have to aim at weak parts of the enemy vehicle unless you really are going for those penetrating shots. And talking about penetrating shots, if Menli can hit the back of that T-29, he's going to be in a good state. But unfortunately, it looks like it goes slightly high, missing the hull, instead hitting the fairly thick turret armor of the T-29, meaning that he's incapable of penetrating. So what you're noticing here is that this gun on the Oho is just consistent. And I think that Menli would probably be doing better here if he was using the 105mm main armament that is available on this tank, with I think 330 alpha damage and about 217mm of penetration. But the issue with that gun, and I thoroughly recommend you check out my full review on the Oho if you want to know my opinion in greater detail, is that it doesn't have any premium rounds, and so when you do get stuck into a tier 10 game, you do struggle to be able to play that supporting role that your tier 8 heavies want to do to be effective in the tier 10 game. So I think my overall opinion is that the 150mm gun is more consistent on the Oho, and it looks like it's doing Menli proud here. Fair enough, he's been pretty much continuously firing for the last 5 minutes, but he's now up to 4,769 damage as he pretty much one-shots that tier 6 Chinese light tank. But it's not looking good for Menli now. He's down in a 1 versus 5 situation, and there are some rather skilled players on the enemy team as well that he's going to have to contest. Unfortunately, that shell doing 328 damage to the side of the Tiger P there. Will he be able to handle this one? We're just going to have to find out. But oh gosh, there's a full health Ferdinand on the enemy team. That's something that he's certainly going to have to watch out for. One thing that's interesting is the Black Prince hasn't actually been spotted yet. I wonder where he'll appear, or maybe he's AFK. We'll have to take a look at that later on in the game. So one thing that is really annoying about the Oho is that these mini turrets on the front of the tank actually prevent you from depressing the gun. But it looks like Menli knows about this, and so he turns his tank to the side to be able to depress the gun enough to put a shot into the Ferdinand there. And that's something that you can take advantage of if you are fighting against an Oho. If you can get in front of the Oho and basically face hug it, then it can really struggle to be able to depress its gun enough to be able to shoot you, especially if it's not using the derp gun. But of course, if it's using the derp gun, be very careful, because your top armor is usually quite weak and will allow the Oho to obliterate the top of your tank. So that shell from the Ferdinand tells us that he's not using the top gun, he's using the 105mm. So how does that help Menli? Well, that means that the Ferdinand only has 200mm of penetration rather than 246 or whatever the 128mm has on the Ferdinand. So that means that if he keeps his frontal armor to him, he should be okay. But what it also means is that the Ferdinand isn't going to have that big alpha damage hit. And these are all things that you need to try and take into account for, and you can do that more cleanly than ever with Wargaming's relatively new damage direction taken indicators. You can quickly tell what caliber the enemy guns have. And that's a very important thing to do if you want to then be able to use that to your advantage in this kind of situation. And if I was fighting the Ferdinand in any other tank, that would tell me that if it misses, I don't have very long before it reloads again. The rate of fire on that 105mm will be decent indeed. Oh gosh, painful there that Menli misses that Ferdinand over the top. Now he's down to 643 hit points. This could be quite tense if the Ferdinand manages to put 2 rounds into him. It's likely that he's going to be killing him. However, this Ferdinand seems very happy on just sitting there, and I don't think the Ferdinand quite understands how tall his tank is. And one of the best things about the Oho is there's a very short distance between the top of the gun and the top of the tank. And so that means there's very little opportunity for the opponents to shoot you in the forehead of the vehicle. And so when you are working a ridgeline like this, the Ferdinand must just be absolutely baffled that Menli can poke his gun over the ridgeline and shut down the 4th consecutive tank. Well, his 8th consecutive tank without dying, but getting through his 1 versus 5 situation to now reduce it to a 1 versus 1. Now, spoilers, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that the Black Prince is an AFK for 3 minutes. A bit of a disappointment for me at the end of the game. I was really hoping that we were going to see some more action. Nevertheless, this was an incredible result for Menli. Look at the plethora of hero medals that he received. The one that everyone wants, the Kolobanov's medal for standing alone against at least 5 opponents and winning. Unfortunately, that Black Prince was AFK on the enemy team. The Radley Walters medal for the 8 kills that he picked up this round. The DeLanglades medal, which is kind of like a super defender medal for eliminating at least 4 enemy tanks while they were inside the cap circle, in addition to the standard defender's medal for, I guess, his 100 base defense points. Yeah, look, 100 cap, 100 defense, great stuff there, Menli. A steel war medal, unsurprisingly, 3,250 damage, blocked only 4 rounds, able to penetrate his tank, and he still had hit points to spare should he have needed to fight the Black Prince. An invader for capping out, and a high caliber for an incredible amount of damage, 7,257 in a tier 8 tank. I would be thrilled to have that in a tier 10 tank, let alone the Oho. And I must mention one of my favorite things about this replay, and that is Menli's description of it. The game starts normal as any other WOD, but I'm like, I'm an oh-ho and I don't give a and I just wreck them all, but one lone AFK Churchill survives. Sad face. Well, Menly, I don't think I could have summed it up better myself, and you probably could have saved me about 10 minutes of commentary if I had just read that out during the replay at the beginning. And I should make a final mention about the fact that the oh-ho is a very economical tank to play. Even though Menly plays without a premium account, he was still able to make 40,000 credits profit this battle. And also, I just realized that the amount of experience that he received was without a premium account. 2,217 base in a tier 8 tank. That is absolutely gigantic. Very fitting of the tier 8 Japanese super heavy. So Menly, thank you so much for uploading this on What Replays for the community to enjoy. And I should also highlight that some people have been starting to put QuickyBaby in the title of their What Replays uploads. And if you guys want to do that to try and get my attention, that's fine, and you know what, it helps as well because I know that you actually want to be featured on the channel. And hopefully all of you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like. And if you're watching this video as it's released on Sunday, it's time for another World of Tanks Tech Tree showcase live on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby right now. And this week, James Moore suggested the lightly armored British turreted tank destroyers leading up to the FV405, and 67 of you voted for that. And on the Facebook side of things, 132 of you voted for the British tank destroyers, with the FV215B183 being the preferred choice. So I'm now going to flip a £5 note, and if it's the Queen, we're going to be playing the lightly armored tanks, and if it's Churchill that lands face up, then we're going to be playing the heavily armored tanks. Here we go. Oh guys, it is Churchill. Churchill landed face up. That means that I'm going to be playing the FV215B183 right now on Twitch. And if you've never seen one of my tech tree showcases before, it's basically like a miniature tank review all the way up the tree, starting from tier 1 and this week culminating with the FV215B183. So if you've never played the line, you can see if maybe it's worth the grind, and if you already have it, maybe pick up a few tips and tricks along the way. And so hopefully I see all of you right now on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.